What it is, fellow Samoans, it is your boy, Samoan Fan 101, and I am here, and clearly with a new look. I'm growing out my facial hair, I got new glasses, you already saw my haircut, and if you saw last Saturday's video, then you'll know that I am doing my Star Wars Mania, and this is my first one, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And the movie is just as great as pretty much you would expect it to be. It's still a great, near masterpiece. There's a couple little things, but they're minor. So, yeah, I shouldn't have to explain the plot, considering pretty much everyone knows it. But for all two of you that don't know the movie, then I'll explain. It is a time of darkness. It is the age of the Empire. And the the rebels are getting their ass kicked by the Empire. However, after a mission that would later be shown in Rogue One, they have stolen the plans of the Death Star, which of course has the power to obliterate planets from existence. And it's because of that, they're on two droids who are carrying the plans, at least unknowingly at first for 3PO. Are sent to one Obi-Wan Kenobi who resides on Tatooine. They will come across the new owner, Luke Skywalker, and will come across a bunch of colorful characters along the way. Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and a host of other sort of characters. Now, of course, what happens is they get tracked to the Death Star, and they have to escape. And of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices his life against Darth Vader in order for the others to escape. And they go back to the Rebel base on the 4th moon of Yavin. And afterwards, they fight against the Empire, and you pretty much know the ending. Luke is down to basically being the last fighter. Han Solo, who left earlier to pay off a debt that a bounty on his head, came back to save Luke, and Luke destroys the Death Star, and we see Darth Vader, of course, being badass as always. The ending, of course, has a ceremony with Luke and Han being celebrated as heroes, and cut to the Star Wars theme and the credits. This is a great movie. I mean, come on, it's fucking Star Wars. Of course it's great. It's the original movie, the one that set the precedent for all sci-fi movies after its release. Now, sorry about that. Now, there are a lot of things about this movie that are great. First of all, the acting from everyone is pretty much on point. Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, who were unknowns at the time, did great in their roles. Harrison Ford, who I believe was coming off his role of Indiana Jones, also did great as Han Solo. In fact, Harrison Ford has said that a lot of Han Solo comes from the real Harrison Ford, which is why he feels so right with the character. Alec Guinness was great as the old master of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was about to say Lawrence Fishburne. Definitely not Lawrence Fishburne. God, I'm already forgetting his name. Shit. Who's the guy that voiced Vader? Fuck. Now, okay, you see, now I gotta look it up, because James Earl Jones, that's his name. Knew it was a Jones name. James Earl Jones voices Vader. Peter Cushing, who was at the later part of his career and clearly older, still did great in his role. Pretty much everyone was on point in this movie. Everyone that mattered pretty much did a great job. The special effects for the time are still fantastic. There's some moments looking back now where you can tell there's some obvious green screening. After all, I have been watching the Godzilla movies recently in the order that they came out, and I've been learning about the ways of terrible green screening on several of them. And then there's a few moments of green screening in this movie. Now, I say that I say that because I did not watch one of the special editions. I watched the VHS of the very original Star Wars Episode 4. It was still called Episode 4, but this is not one of the special editions. You know, Greedo shooting first before Han, meeting Jabba in the hangar of the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, that's not in this movie. I watched the very original Episode 4. So all the little special effects that didn't really work, that's because I was watching the original version. There are some moments of technology weirdness, going out of whack. Like, for example, during the fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, there's a moment where you can see the gray stick that is supposed to be the lightsaber beam, but for some reason something happened to the special effects, and you can actually see the gray model stick that they were using for fencing. But aside from the little things, the special effects still really hold up. It's still very enjoyable. The environments, despite being very condensed, because of the budget, not a bad budget, but it's not so high that you can show off how big your world is. So they did a great job of keeping things private, keeping things intimate, and giving everything a certain level of colorfulness and as well as personality. Now, with that said, is there anything bad about this movie? Well, no, sort of. The plot is you could say the plot is a very paint-by-numbers plot, but keep in mind, this is coming from a guy who grew up on shows like Flash Gordon and other such classics. In fact, later in Episode 1, he would use Ben-Hur as the template for the pod race. But we're not talking about Episode 1, that's a little bit while later. So, sticking to Episode 4. The plot is very paint by the numbers. You got your princess, you got the Empire, you got the rebellion. You could say it's paint by numbers, but it's simple and it gets right to the point. And the simpleness of the plot is essentially it's lost in the fact of all these characters having the different motivations and the different kind of personalities that are involved. So you can very easily get into the plot without being completely taken out of the moment. Like I said, is there anything bad in this movie? Well, like I said, there are a couple moments where the special effects do kind of short out. A couple bits of obvious green screening. As I said, the one lightsaber moment during the lightsaber duel between Kenobi and Vader. There's a couple moments here and there. There are one or two moments of a little bit of overacting, like we kind of saw later in the prequels. For example, of course, the infamous scene with Leia trying to sound British in that one little moment in the whole scene. I don't know what that's all about. Luke, very early in the movie, basically complaining to his Uncle Owen about wanting to hang out with his friends. Just the way he says the line, the power converters line, if you remember the movie. A little bit whiny, almost a little bit whiny, but aside from the small moments in this movie, there's only small moments here and there where you can kind of tell just a little bit of flaws. Aside from that, the movie's very much on point. The action sequences, despite not being, say, I wouldn't say as exciting. They're still exciting, but not nearly as, like, for example, you look at Avengers Infinity War. You're not going to find any fights in this movie comparable to Avengers Infinity War. It's just not going to happen. But the fights are still exciting because of the music, the mood, the tone, the music. Of course, the music. I gotta mention how great the music is. The music is just masterpiece. I mean, the music in many of the movies, in fact, are fantastic. You have a great mood. They never take you out of the moment. The costume effects look great. I still am surprised how good they got it by 1977. This came out in 1977. This didn't come out in the 80s or 90s, at a time when we started to see more of those things coming into play. This was in 1977. By the way, I'm looking over here because my TV's right here. This is in 1977 when, you know, films were, again, relatively simple. Sure, Godzilla did some things that were out of the box, but that's in Japan. In America, there were still plenty of films that were relatively simple. You had some films like Alien and, you know, a couple 2001: A Space Odyssey, but for the most part, and even Planet of the Apes, for the most part, things were kept simple. This was a movie that really just pushed the boundaries. So, even with those tiny little flaws in the movie, it's easy to immerse yourself and just to ignore those things. So for that, I'm going to give this a very high, because I kind of give my ratings on a scale of 1 to 10. I give it a very high 9 out of 10. It set the bar high, it set it very far, a couple obvious moments, a little here and there. But for the most part, this is still a fantastic film that you should go and watch. 9 out of 10. So next time, guys, I will see you next Sunday with the second part of Star Wars Mania, when I review Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So until then, peace.